Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and thanks for joining the session on trends and developments on investing in Africa. My name is David van Dijk. I've been fortunate enough to have been based in different parts of Africa in the early years of my working life. And for the past years, I've been working with entrepreneurs and more recently with investors in Africa. I'm very happy to have this amazing panel here. We only have 20 minutes, so if you allow me to do the introductions, we can sort of jump into the actual conversation faster. So I'm very happy we have Tommy Davies. Tommy is a long-time entrepreneur, investor, mentor, very much a recognized figure in the startup space, investing space across Africa. Tommy is also one of the co-founders of the Lagos Angels Network, which is probably next to the Cairo Angels, one of the most active and innovative angel networks on the continent. And Tommy is the founding president of the African Business Angel Network, which is a non-profit foundation simply trying to promote early stage investing, angel investing across Africa. Ben White, sitting next to Tommy, is the founder of VC for Africa, which is the largest online community of entrepreneurs and investors, other stakeholders that have an interest in building great companies across the continent. Ben will have a moment a little later to speak more about what he does. And we have Yazi, who joins us from Niamey, Niger, very much involved with the local startup community. He runs a program called ACC Entrepreneur, and he recently launched the Niger Business Angel Network, which is a great development. So I'm very happy to have you here. So maybe Tommy, to start with you. You recently wrote an article called The African Business Angel, where you highlighted two things. One was you spoke about why is Mark Zuckerberg coming to Africa? Why is he coming now? And what does it mean? What does it mean basically? And secondly, you spoke about basically what's happening across the African continent. And maybe for the sake of this audience, if you can elaborate a little bit on why is Mark Zuckerberg coming to Africa? What is the Africa of today look like?
Well, we have a number of things that have been happening on the continent in the last decade that has changed us from the lost continent or the hopeless continent, I think as Time magazine put it, to what everybody's now calling Africa 2.0 or Africa Rising. And essentially, the center point or the centerpiece of this is the fact that we've got the youngest continent on the planet, okay, with a rising middle class that is techno-literate because of mobile telephony. So that cocktail of three, when you mix it with the African entrepreneurial spirit, you start to see what is happening. And the likes of Zuckerberg, and he wasn't the first, Bill Gates has been investing on the continent for nearly a decade. Google's been around for a while. Oracle has been there. We've had the tech heavyweights to the point where some are even thinking that there may be a stifling point to the entrepreneurial spirit. But what is happening, what has happened of recent is we've had accelerators and incubators start to proliferate across the continent. And then in the last 5 years, we've seen the rise of angel investments. So all of a sudden, local seed funding is available, and once you start growing a lot of seeds, you start to see some blooms. And that's really what is starting to attract the international audience into early stage investing on the continent. The latest trend we're also seeing is an interest from the African diaspora who, have a penny or two in their back pockets and are starting to put this back home. The resultant effect is an increase in the level of activity we're seeing in the early stage ecosystem. So those are some of the factors I touched on the article. There are quite a number of others, but I think, suffice it to say, because unlike other developments on the continent, this is purely private sector led and not government driven. It is a sustainable model, and I expect it to continue for a while.
Okay, thank you. Ben, maybe to continue with you. So VC for Africa plays a pivotal role in many aspects of the startup space across Africa. One being research. So you have been you and your team have been conducting research for the past so many years. Can you sort of, help give us some numbers or some trends or things that you see happening, also for the people here to understand? So what is actually happening in Africa today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to also where the conversation for all of us starts. If you want to talk about ecosystem development, if you want to talk about entrepreneurship as a driver for development, the first question always is, okay, well, where are our entrepreneurs? Who are these individuals? What ideas are they, fostering or they're building or sort of incubating in their minds? And how are they, taking steps to actually bring those ideas into the marketplace? And, where are things working and where are things maybe, where do they face challenges? And only in sort of bringing entrepreneurs together as part of a network and as part of a community, are you then able to actually reach out to that same community and say, okay, who are you, what are you doing, what's working, what could be useful or helpful for you in making your life easier as an entrepreneur. So VC for Africa has, like 45,000 members in 159 countries, and there's 6,000 startups that are active in 46 African markets. And for the fourth year in a row, we've actually reached out to this audience and we've said, benchmark your performance against that of your peers. Tell us how you're doing in terms of fundraising. Tell us how you're doing in terms of growing the size of your team. Tell us how you're doing in terms of growing your revenue and turnover. And then compare yourself across sector, across industry, a country, phase or stage of business that you're in. And so as this index has been developing over the course of 4 years, you're able to start to distill certain insights that we find enormously interesting, which are, of course, also interesting for the entrepreneurs, but also for stakeholders as a whole. A lot of emphasis has been on, just sort of top line number of capital that, amount of capital that goes into the ecosystem. Certainly, that's something that I think in the last 5 years we've seen grow considerably year on year. But I think what's actually much more impressive, much more interesting is looking at the averages. So how are these teams growing their revenue, growing their teams, and then what is the actual average amount of deal size and deal capital going in per venture? So there you see, for example, 3 years ago, the average team size was 3.7. If you go back to those same companies today, that average has grown to 8.9. So it just shows you that these businesses are tapping into real markets where there's real economic activity and there's ample room for growth. And so if you look at team size, if you look at revenue turnover, you're seeing, again, this year-on-year increase. And so not only are the number of companies growing over time, but much more importantly, the quality of the businesses is improving.
Can you make just before we go to Yazzie, but can you make the correlation between sort of angel investment involvement and growth of business or success of business?
We're starting to. For example, we know that if one of the companies has developed a relationship with a corporate, they're much more likely to raise outside funding. We know that if the founder has a high level of education, university level degree, they're much more likely to be successful in growing their enterprise. We know, for example, companies that have participated in an incubator or an accelerator outperform their peers by 23%. So you would like to see this insight and correlation between startup and angel investor also visualized in concrete numbers. And we're getting very close to being able to do that. So you can really start to understand what are the influencing factors on that path to success.
Perfect. And it's a perfect bridge because, Yazzie, obviously you run an acceleration program in Niger. You call it an accelerator or an incubator?
Accelerator.
Accelerator.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about what is happening in Niger today, and also what made you start the Angel Network.
Thank you. Niger is close to Nigeria. Many people, when they say Niger, they say Nigeria, but we are never speaking the same language. But yes, we depend mostly on Nigeria on many things, and we are developing the ecosystem. A few years ago, if you say entrepreneurs is like a criminal, because the government provides jobs. So people who just graduated recently, when there's no job, so they are just sitting, no work, nothing. So we thought that it's good to start training people on how they can translate what they learn at school to translate it into business. So this is how we start. And currently in Niger, we have three. You have two incubators, one on the main campus, the University of Niamey, and one which is a public-private partnership with Orange. And then I was running a incubator, like not domestic. So now I think it's good to have a business accelerator just for 9 months, but you have 2 cohorts. So the idea of doing this is to train those who have been trained over the last 3 years, to take them and to have coaching, trainings and mentoring, and also for sure help them access to capital. So this is what we are doing in Niger now.
Okay, very good. So you mentioned Nigeria. So Tommy, obviously you've been one of the architects of what has been happening in Nigeria for the past years. So what I find very interesting is some of the new developments that are taking place. So for example, the Lagos Angels, they started with doing syndication. We have an initiative called Rising Tide Africa. The Cairo Angels have a new chapter in London. And I think it's great because all these these all new ways to try and mobilize much more capital, and also get the diaspora involved, like you mentioned. So maybe it's good to take the syndication by the Lagos Angels as a little case study, just to explain how what happens, how does it work today.
Okay, I think at the risk of airtime, it's useful to sort of say where we've come from and where we think we're going. When the Lagos Angel Network started, it started just like any other network, which was, let's get together once a month, take a look at deals and see. Then after a year, we found we'd only done 2 deals. One we did as a group, and one, a series of ones were done as individuals. I'm now discovering there were actually, in that first year, there were 6 transactions done, but only one was done in a pooled effort. The others were done, I did one individually, Dotun did 2, Collins did 1, and so on and so forth. So we stepped back and said, what are we getting wrong? Because we weren't getting traction, and it was the fact that we didn't have the process or the tools in place to bring everybody together. And so we designed something called the Lagos Deal Day, which is an inclusive mechanism. It wasn't just for network members only. So we created we created syndicates that were led by network members, but once you were a member, you could bring your friends in who were not members, and they could participate in the deal. And the first one was quite successful. And then we ran into a roadblock, which was we couldn't find the kind of deals that we wanted at the level we were playing, which was sort of 25,000 is what, $5,000? So we had to up the game a bit, and that's what we've done now. So we are running, even as we speak, we're running a deal day now, and the board met a few weeks ago, and this is, I can share it. We started discussing with some Nigerians in diaspora about a diaspora fund, okay, that will back into the Angel Network. But we're thinking maybe we'll go through some kind of crowdfunding platform or some platform that allows for international transparency. Because the biggest challenge, which I was saying earlier, is if you sit in Istanbul, or you sit in London, or you sit in New York, or you sit in Sydney, you don't, you can't necessarily know what's going on in Lagos, and you want to know. And yes, it's fine for Tommy to tell you this is what's happening, but it's also very useful if independently you have facts coming to you that he then voices over. And we found that that's the model, that resonates with a lot of people, and that's the model we're sort of trying to architect now.
And how many syndicates are active within the
There are
network?
5 syndicates active. The largest one, I think, has 22 members, okay, and the smallest one has 6 members.
So Ben, you've been active in sort of in the space since 2007, 2003. So if you sort of look ahead a little bit, then what is next for Africa? Where is this going to go?
Well, so I mean, as the entrepreneurial pool of talent grows, and as the quality of the entrepreneurs improves, so I think what you've seen as well is a lot of times the entrepreneurs had not been doing this before, so they were first-time founders. Now you're starting to get that second generation. Now you have founders who are actually investing in new generations of founders coming up. So your pool of talent is starting to go 2-3 levels deep. And so as the quality of the pipeline improves, then it's natural that capital becomes interested and is saying, okay, well, what's this about? How do we get involved? What are these people doing, and what do they need? What's the role that I can play? So indeed, with something like ABAN, the African Business Angels Network, the work is really about, okay, how do we take maybe some of the more developed or successful examples from Nigeria or Egypt, and how do we then start to foster and share that information with friends from Niger or from Mozambique or from other countries that are interested in also setting up initiatives like this. And I think it was 4 years ago at the Brussels Investment Forum, where we had a conversation with EBAN where they said, look, we've got 20,000 members here in Europe. We're not seeing the growth number and the investment opportunities that we would like to see here in Europe. We would love to engage our counterparts from the African continent. But as a Norwegian, I'm not going to be able to invest directly in Zimbabwe if I don't have partners there. If I don't have trusted contacts who can help me manage an investment and also work with the team to navigate sort of the intricacies of running successful enterprises in Harare. So really the job is to build up these networks of trusted individuals, these groups, and then to provide them with the best practices, tools, information, knowledge. I mean, a lot of times, even at lunch, we were having a conversation where somebody was saying, what do you mean you provide trainings and tools for investors? I thought they had it all figured out. But yeah, I mean, as much investment and time and energy that goes into working with founders and getting founders up to a level that they're able to come to the table and negotiate with investors, early stage investors, especially high net worth individuals that have been investing in more traditional sectors like real estate, making this transition into innovation and into early stage enterprises, that's quite a dramatic shift. And then having groups of investors from Zimbabwe collaborating with investors from Helsinki, that's another shift. So it's just this very sort of focused, very diligent, very consistent, step-by-step process where we're building these linkages, unlocking innovation and capital to make more of this possible.
So if you would sort of, if there would be people in the audience who would say, listen, I'm interested, how do I get involved? Then what would your advice be?
I mean, there's a regular series of programs and things that we do. I mean, the first is, so the annual African Investor Summit. This will be the 4th or the 5th year that we do it? The fourth year. This is an annual event. Everyone is welcome to come. We're bringing together investors from across the continent, also parties outside of the continent that are interested in investing in the ecosystem. That's a perfect platform to come in and get involved. But then there's also more specific opportunities for people who are really already ready to take that next step, so to speak. One of the programs we're working on at the moment is Excel Africa. This is with the World Bank. This is a Pan-African acceleration program that will bring 20 digital startups to Cape Town, South Africa. And for that program, we're looking for mentors who want to get involved. So mentorship is a great way of engaging some of these teams, learning about the opportunities that they're working on, the challenges that they face, but then also coming with us to Cape Town for a residency, which will be a really intensive, immersive experience with colleagues from across the African space. So that's a great, easy way to get involved.
Okay. And when is this happening?
We're currently recruiting mentors, so you
Okay.
could literally come up to me after this, and I'll share details, and we can just take the conversation from there.
Okay, perfect. Yazzie, if you had sort of, you're sitting next to two important people in the, very experienced people in the ecosystem. If you had if they can, can they help you with anything? Is there something you're faced with that either Ben or Tommy could assist with?
Yeah, we are brand new in this, and we are here to learn and to get the best practice. And one of our need is to have really a very sound curriculum for our accelerator. I just combined my entrepreneurship curriculum and some exchange program I attended, and use some of the EBAN knowledge center materials. So this is what I'm combining, jungling. This is like pilot program funded by USAID and SNV, and I think they will be more keen to continue it if it's successful. So anything, it will be good. VC for Africa, we are more than welcome to share what we have, and of course, ABN with their knowledge, with all that they have. I attended 3 master class, I think, on angel investing, and we are more than ready to take more. This is why we are here, and I brought a friend just to learn and to be able to share with our country, Niger. Niger, like, everything is new, so it's like, when I speak with the government, angel investors said, what's angel investing? They don't understand the language. So I'm trying to convene the language, all the acronyms, all the terminologies, and then, yeah, I think we are in good fit. I have very good mentors, coaches, and I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, because it's very vice versa, right? Because we need people like you to help organize the marketplace, to find those entrepreneurs in Niger that have that want, to grow and have that ambition to build great companies, and then to see how we can link them up.
Thank you.
So to have you here is really a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Maybe for the audience, anything and everything you always want to know, but we're afraid to ask about the continent or investing in Africa? Are there any questions?
First of all, thank you for an inspiring stories. I'm Ivan, I'm coming from Montenegro. And having in mind our background from the region, I'd like to ask Tommy Davis, what was the most difficult thing for him when he was establishing a BAN in Lagos and consequentially the Federation of Bans in Africa?
The most difficult thing in establishing the Lagos Angel Network, it was actually finding the people with the right mindset. Because a lot of, I have, with all humility, what I call a Rolodex to die for. I can pick up the phone to about 3,000-4,000 people that I know on a first name basis, and they won't say, who is this, kind of thing. But going through that and selecting, I'm finding 5 that would say yes. I know that it's not just about my cash. I've got to spend time with these young ones, and I've got to actually give them access to my business networks, which are sort of the 3 basics of angel investing. That was the most challenging, was hours on time on the phone, sometimes over lunch. I still remember the gentleman who's now the chairman of the network. We must have had something like about 6 or 8 dinners where he was trying to explain to me that he was already doing what I was talking about. And I was trying to explain to him that, yes, as an individual you are, but we need is a group. And trying to convince him that he was better off hunting in a pack than hunting alone. The day he said, okay, yes, I will, I'll be part of this, I think that's when I knew we had something. So that was the biggest challenge.
Thank you.
It still is, till now.
Are there other questions?
Hi. So I apologize in advance because maybe my question will be a bit limited. I'm in impact investing. So one of the things that we did and that we're doing now in Croatia and New Europe countries is there is basically no existing ecosystem in startups and especially in impact investing. And the thing that worked really good for us when we decided to bring international projects there. So these are like startups with proven concepts, and then we just bring them in a new area where they demonstrate what they're doing. They're running businesses there, and they just keep motivate people to do the same. So the best way to educate people is to demonstrate. So my first question is, do you invest in startups and in projects from abroad? And did you consider to bring them in Nigeria? Yeah, so that's the first question. I will think about the second one.
Do we invest in startups that are coming into Nigeria?
Yeah.
I've done one, and I lost my money. Okay, there were two gentlemen out of Germany, and I thought they had an amazing product, and we put together this. Actually, this is before the syndicate deals in Lagos Angel Network. I think there were 4 of us that put together, I think, something like about 7 or 8 grand each. And they got a subsequent round to our funding, then they ran afoul of the government. And because they didn't have a local integrated with them, they'd made some mistakes, which we were not aware of. One of them left of his own volition, the other one got deported, okay? And that was the end of, that was the end of that particular venture. There have been other people that have invested. In fact, the biggest e-commerce company in Nigeria today is a transplant, which is, sorry, you know what I mean by transplant, right? Is a transplant called Jumia. Okay, it belongs to Rocket Internet, who I think they call themselves Africa Internet now. Yeah, Africa Internet Group. So yes, they do exist, and some are successful. I have not had the privilege of that success personally, but that shouldn't stop anybody.
And this is also where I think the diaspora has been playing a role. So we've had a lot of the local startup centers have benefited from diaspora coming back to their country of origin to start up companies. So a lot of the more successful Nigerian startups are from founders that came back after doing their education in the US or in the UK, have now come back, have found capital, built out teams. And then what you're seeing is that the employees, the first generation of employees, they then leave those businesses and then go out and start up new companies with all of that thinking and methodology in their heads. So you're seeing that, the transversion of expertise and methodologies and knowledge, through cases like this.
And do I have a right on that second question? Yeah. So that one is more practical. So one of our projects is basically co-living houses for tech entrepreneurs. And we are based in London. We have 5 houses, and now we bring entrepreneurs from undeveloped countries for 3 and 6 months to live and spend some time in London. We also introduce them to our network of mentors and investors as well, and then they basically go back home with some knowledge. As an entrepreneur who moved from her country to London, I realized how fast things can go in places like that. You get a huge motivation, and sometimes you just can't wait to come home and to show your people what you have learned. Yeah. So if you would be, especially we are doing now a special house for women, for girls, and for them we also have provided a sponsorship, so we fund their time and living expenses in London. We have some contracts with the British Embassy in a few countries, and people are reacting really well. So if any of you is interested in doing that and making that kind of collaboration, we can do that.
There is an organization which is called She Leads. She Leads Africa, okay, which is dedicated to women's entrepreneurship, with whom our organizations partner, and we tend to default to them, okay, simply because I believe personally in what I call horses for courses. You know, people should focus on one, you know, what they're good at. And She Leads has taken women entrepreneurship to the next level. If you were talking about women investors, then I would have talked to you about Rising Tide, which is a different organization. But for women, female entrepreneurship on the continent today, the go-to organization is called She Leads, and we'll be more than happy after this session
Okay, great,
to
thank
talk
you.
to you about that.
Okay, thank you. I think we want to wrap it up, unless there's one last question. No? Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for the panel for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. That's it. Thank you, President.
Well done.
Thank you
Well done.
very much.